Benvenuti a questo incontro con Todd Lockwood. Welcome, Todd.
Hi, thank you.
Welcome at Lucca Changes. Grazie per essere qui con noi a Lucca Changes. We are sorry you can't be here in person in Italy. We'd love to have you back.
Yep. Things are strange all over, aren't they?
Yes, we live in strange times.
But we had such a great time at Lucca. It was so much fun. Such a beautiful city and such a wonderful group of people. Lucio.
He'd be delighted. You know he'd be delighted. I know him well. And yes, we do remember you well. And I know your fans, Italian fans, would love to see you again live, hopefully next year.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully we get this virus licked.
Yeah, by then. But while you're here, let's talk about your art, your creation, your work, and in particular, one title above all that I'd like you to describe it, to share with us, and that's Found Worlds. What's Found Worlds, Todd?
Found Worlds is my art career in a book. It's 352 pages of art. I got some commentary from different people like R.A. Salvatore and Donato Giancola. John Avon wrote the introduction for me, real sweetheart. But I was looking for a title, and Lost Worlds is corny. Plus, once you find a lost world, it's not lost anymore. So I thought Found Worlds would be the perfect title. And I did a Google search just to make sure it hadn't been used before, and it hadn't. Seems like an obvious. But that's not the cover. That's actually page 1. That's where I'll sign and do a remark if somebody has purchased the remark.
So you're going to take us through? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't know how far we'll get in an hour, but we'll try. Sort of nice to just open up with a couple of pretty ladies. And then a horrible monster. This is the copyright page. That picture appears again later in whole. So you see the introduction by John Avon.
Yes, I do.
He and I met in Essen in 1999 or something like that. We just hit it off immediately, and we've been great friends since. I wrote the introduction to his art book.
A book like this one, is it a chance to, I don't know, to collect from friends and colleagues in a way, to exchange forwards, as you said, for...
Yeah.
I imagine.
So it goes way back. This is a piece I did in 93, I think. No, it says here somewhere 85. That's going back a ways. There's older pieces than that in here too. Some of these are student work. Some of these are images I created for my D&D group. And I got some testimonials from them too. These are the best friends of my life here, my old D&D group. Most of them I've known since high school.
Are you still a D&D player?
I'm sorry?
Do you still play D&D?
I haven't played in almost 20 years. It was strange, but Dungeons and Dragons was how I kept my insanity fresh during years of advertising. And when I got the job at TSR, I was living it every day, all day. I was immersed in it, and I didn't need the game so much anymore. Plus, I had left my old group in Colorado, and finding a new group was tricky. That is my friends as all their characters. I made them a group portrait. They kind of look like them too. Just early career, early on. That's a piece that kind of changed my career in a way. I was discovering a new way to use an electric eraser and pencil and graphite, sharpening the eraser to a fine point on the sandpaper in order to pick out little highlights and details. And I got kind of immersed in it. This was actually from my players. One of them had switched to deities, and he needed a quest in order to atone for that. So I was going to send them to hell. And I started this as a visual aid for them. And then I got the job and moved to take the job at TSR, and I never got to run the campaign. But these bad dogs helped me kick down many doors. People saw it, remembered it.
In more ways than one. Sorry, was that graphite you said? That's pencil.
I'm sorry?
The one that the dogs with 3 heads, is that a graphite pencil and paper?
Oh, the Cerberus was graphite, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Pencil and some of it, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Yeah, some of this is mostly just smearing graphite powder in with a soft cloth and then erasing back to reveal the light. But a lot of it is just noodling in with a very sharp pencil, getting in there and noodling out the tones until they're even or doing what I want them to do.
Wow. I'm absolutely fascinated.
So this is some of the early work that I got from my first convention in 1994, the Worldcon in Winnipeg. Terry Chechko at Asimov magazine gave me a lot of early work, and then Carl Nam at Science Fiction Age and Realms of Fantasy magazines gave me work.
I read in one of your past interviews, if I remember correctly, you mentioned the fact that Worldcon was a turning point for you in more ways than one.
Absolutely, yeah. It was an eye-opener. I had been doing some of this work for Asimov's, came about for different reasons, and I didn't know from conventions. I asked the art director, how can I get more work like this? And she said, you should attend the science fiction fantasy convention, hang a show. And I said, a what? I had no idea. I didn't know what a convention was. But that first convention inspired this piece, which is Kali Prakriti, sort of a reimagining of the Hindu goddesses. This is another graphite painting.
It's incredible. How long did it take to do something like this? A couple
years, off and on. I didn't do it in one sitting. This is what I pulled out when I was getting bored with painting beer cans or cigar boxes.
Of course.
The advertising work that was driving me crazy. I'd put it aside and get this out and add some more detail. Are you going to change? There we go. This is one of the early pieces I did for Carl Nam. And there's, many of these come with stories, and you can go. You don't need the side button. Thank you. Don Murin, longtime friend, worked at TSR when I started there. She's the last surviving alum from TSR, still working at Wizards. She wrote me an introduction to this D&D section. I should have opened a smaller PDF, I think.
How long have you known each other?
I'm sorry?
How long have you known each other, you and John, your friend?
24 years.
Now, how much do you think your work, would you say your work has changed, if it has, in those years, in these years?
Well,
because I imagine collaborating or working with someone as you evolve.
These three pieces were done in acrylics, which is what I did most of my work in advertising days, because I didn't trust that oils would dry fast enough. often when I was working on ad pieces, I would finish them up and box them and run to the airport and mail them to the client the same day. So they had to dry fast. So that was one of the biggest changes about getting the job. I did these 3 pieces freelance, and then when they offered me the job, I committed to oils because I was there on site and I would have time. And how on earth did you go all the way to the end of the book? That's dumb. Let's try to get back to where we were.
I don't worry.
Oh, because I accidentally hit the end button. That's why. So these were acrylic pieces that I was doing in freelance. The black and white are graphite. Come on, you can do it. This piece was great fun. The
Is this acrylic as well?
Yeah. Oh, come on.
Oh, it's okay.
It's getting ahead of me. All right. It's like it's going automatically. How did it? Why is it doing that?
It's becoming a slideshow, sorry.
It's in slideshow mode. Yeah, I don't know how I got it to do that. Well, all right, we're having a slideshow, whether I like it or not.
It's okay.
Maybe that's how we get through this in an hour.
Pleasure. Oh, okay. If I get it right, I think he decided to obey with a delayed reply. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that defaulted to a slideshow.
These are acrylics as well, or are they computer graphic?
Right. Yeah, I wanted to zoom out a little bit, leave you room for other things. So we kind of sped through some of my early D&D work that I was doing on site there. I really chose the wrong PDF file. I wanted the best image possible, but it's so big that it's lagging behind me. Mark Nelson wrote me a nice introduction as well.
Oh, that's nice. Was it strange to be able to work on D&D as an artist after being a player, being involved in a different way?
It was very exciting, and I was determined from the time I got to TSR not to take a bad art order. Meaning, if the R&D people had a product and they said, this is what the cover is going to be, if I thought it wasn't that great of an idea, I had the option of walking down the hall and talking to them about it. So what is this product really? What could we really do to find the best image for this? And they were always willing to do that. And so I think I got some really great covers that I might not have otherwise. One in particular coming up. Now these two, when do you stop? Okay, these two, when TSR went bankrupt and laid off a bunch of people, the art staff decided we would do a portfolio for Gen Con. We would each do an angel and a devil. And we all thought that was a great idea. And so I did mine and nobody else did. So it was only me, but that graphite technique again, super useful.
Yeah, but so time consuming. I mean, I see why you did it on your, for yourself as opposed to for a deadline,
Yeah, well, these two, well, yeah, those are for myself. They're much simpler than Kali or Cerberus, so they go more quickly. There's a lot of just big tonal areas, which with powdered graphite are fairly easy to pull off. Come on. That little spinning wheel. Still in the D&D. I feel like during that period, I was really finding myself as an artist. My compositions got better. My understanding of light and anatomy improved. Plus, I was just having great fun, which I think shows up when you enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. Do you get to work with other artists as well? Do you get to work together on the same commissions, or was it a solitary job?
No, but we didn't work on each other's artwork, although we were there for critique or opinions or whatever. And it was great to be able to walk over and watch Jeff Easley paint, or go down the hall and watch Tony Sudlow or Jeff Fields at work. Fred Fields. I don't know why I said Jeff. Fred Fields. Jeff was amazing to watch because you'd come over and he'd have a blank board and he'd just be sitting back in his chair, rocking like this, staring at his board. And he'd go off and come back an hour later and he'd still be sitting there just staring at his board, rocking gently like this. He'd go away for another hour, come back, and it's half done. He has painted it in a flurry. He was sitting there planning out his attack, and then he would just go into it without a wasted brush stroke. The image on the right here, Golem, Spellrune Golem, was an example of a product where they gave me an art order that I thought it just was not going to be an interesting cover. They had, this was a book of golems that you could use in your campaign to murder your players. And, pardon me. And they suggested for the cover, the mad scientist who had created a wax copy of himself, a clone made of wax. And so they're fighting. And I said, well, that's kind of cool as a monster, but as a cover, it's just two dudes fighting. It doesn't really say anything about golems. So maybe there's a better golem in this book that we can use on the cover. And entry after entry was, this is a scary golem that looks just like a human being. No. That's the problem. We need something that doesn't look like a human being. And this particular golem was assembled out of the remains of a dead tree ant that a wizard had killed. And some spell that he put on one of the parchments made of paper made from the wood of the tree reawakened the spark of life. And so the tree ant has gone about gathering up all its lost bits, which was a great fun. So he's got like a spoon and dolls and furniture parts, and he's wrapped in parchment. He's a creepy monster.
Yeah, it is. I love creatures who are not human-like, humanoid in form. It's always slightly more alienating. There is something slightly disturbing when you don't recognize overall the shape of a human body.
Yeah,
I think
it's more freaky.
Yeah, honestly.
Here's some of the first third edition concept art, at least the first in the book. A lot of it's going to go into the sketchbooks, which are an add-on that you can also purchase if you buy the book. Incidentally, if you go to my website, there are links. You can also look at Kickstarter, search for Found Worlds, and you'll find links. You can still buy in. The Kickstarter campaign ended, but we've got a backer kit store set up. So it's not too late. Anybody can still get in on the art book.
Oh, that's intriguing. And I'll repeat that in Italian at the end as well. So remind me if you remember to do that. So, because I didn't know you can still pitch in, you can still buy in the Kickstarter.
Yeah, you can still buy in.
How did the idea of making it a Kickstarter get here? I mean, how did you get that? When did you decide for a Kickstarter project, let's say? Why make it? Why make this book a Kickstarter?
Kickstarter.
Did you
I
more
had
creative?
my first art book, Transitions, was printed by Paper Tiger, and they gave me a $5,000 advance, and that's all I ever saw because they went bankrupt. They went belly up. I tried to contact them about purchasing books in bulk so that I could sell them, and they would not write back to me. They would not respond to me at all. So they kind of stole my first book from me, basically. I made no money.
So sorry.
So I decided that this time I was going to handle it, because if there's going to be money left on the table, it's my money. This is my career. I didn't want some publisher somewhere to take the lion's share from this book, because I can't do another one. This is my career. This is everything.
It's your work. It's your job. It's your time, and it's your effort. Absolutely makes sense.
Yeah. So I decided I would kickstart it, and it has been a learning curve, especially to take on such a big project for your first Kickstarter. But I'm glad I did it. And it's not done yet, obviously. I just got proofs back a week ago from the printer, which I need to mark up and send back. But that's all on the side. This is some of the most fun I ever had in my professional career, was designing dragons for Dungeons and Dragons.
It actually, I think it shows because they're so beautiful to look at, so believable, you know.
Well, that was always my aim with the dragons, was to make them seem real. Now, Sam Wood worked on the dragons with me, and he had a degree in biology from Harvard. And I've always been fascinated by anatomy and comparative biology. And so we just clicked. We both knew that dragons needed to be lean and muscular, and that the biggest limbs on their body are the most important ones, the wings. So they have to have muscle and architecture and some understanding of what's going on underneath. So that was the big push first, was just to come up with the body type. And then we started dressing them up with different heads and different wings and different tails. What was also fun was that we went back to the original dragons that David Sutherland had drawn in the first edition D&D. And while he wasn't the greatest draftsman, he was very imaginative in what he brought to those dragons. And so we took his drawings and just made them make sense anatomically, made them cooler. So a lot of what you saw with all the dragons having different wing types was kind of came about because we were interpreting David Sutherland's dragons.
Actually, no, it's okay. Sorry. The first dragon, the red one, but don't go back. It's okay. Yeah. After the title, I do remember trying to copy that, to draw that, you know, and I don't know which one of my friends, because I do play D&D, played up until a few years ago, but I'm I'm D&D player, and I remember they had that picture print, and they tried to copy it, and then so did I. And it stayed with me, and this is absolutely surreal now. It's a moment of fangirling.
Well, the red dragon is iconic.
It is, absolutely. But the other dragons are really iconic. I mean, the hands shows, you know, you can recognize, you know, your work is recognizable, your hand is recognizable immediately. And I wonder if that's, what is it like to meet people who recognize your work and are familiar with it?
It's gratifying and a little strange. The strangest thing is to have someone come up to me at a convention with a child in their arm and say to me, "I have been looking at your art since I was a little kid." Yes, I'm old. You're welcome. Not that old. On the left here is Bahamut, the way I would have designed him if Wizards of the Coast had let Sam and I design Bahamut. And well, Tiamat's easy. She's just got the heads of all the chromatic dragons. But Bahamut had to be more noble. Whatever the silver dragon has, Bahamut has to have more of it because he's the top dog. So that actually was a collaboration with another artist, a friend of mine named Lee Moyer. I drew Bahamut and, you know, got him all toned out, and then Lee painted him, passed him back to me, and I touched him up and added the, you know, some of the hot shine and stuff. But that's the platinum dragon the way I feel he should have looked. The reason they didn't let us do it is that Dragon and Dungeon magazines wanted to get in on the fun, and so they let them commission Bahamut and Tiamat from outside artists who weren't part of the concept pool and really had no idea what was going on. And what came back was disappointing to me because it was out of continuity with everything Sam and I had already created.
Yeah, I can imagine.
These here are some of the very first digital works that I did. Now that we've moved on, the ones that just left were done in Painter. These are oil paintings. The one on the left in Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, at the beginning of that movie, as he's changing, he's looking in the mirror, and behind him on the closet, there's a poster with a shirt hanging over it to kind of obscure that it says Dungeons and Dragons. But if you look around the edges, it's that painting. So there's an Easter egg for you to find in Spider-Man next time you come across it.
Crossover among fandoms.
And then the Mech Hunter was just a fun piece. We were doing covers for Dragon magazine at the time, and the theory in that era was that as long as you addressed the theme of the issue and put a dragon somewhere in the painting, you could paint pretty much what you wanted. And the theme for this issue was mage versus machine. You can see the dragon tattoo on her shoulder.
Oh, so literally, it's as long as you put a dragon somewhere. Okay.
So I was just kind of eager to, you know, mage versus machine. I wanted to bring a little science fiction into the fantasy here. And it inspired an article for that issue and some interior art. I designed some more robots for it. But that was great fun to paint. And then right before third edition came out, they produced a product for people who wanted to destroy their second edition world and start fresh with the third edition world. So I forget what the product was called, but it was basically destroy your world so that you can start playing third edition. Pretty funny.
I love the contrast between the sketches and the finished work.
Yeah, that's something my designer, Daniel, wanted to bring to the book. So whenever possible, and when they were worth sharing, like here's the entire progress for this painting from thumbnail to value sketch to finished drawing and then the painting. That was a cover for Dungeon magazine, and it was the first reveal of the third edition Beholder.
I think it's interesting because it shows if you got how many changes you've made from the sketch to the finished work, you know.
It's a process of discovery. You know? You get an idea, you sketch it down real simply, and one thing I hate is paintings with a party of adventurers in it that all have their back to you because they're facing the giant monster who you really want to see. And so the thumbnail in the lower left over here got rejected for that reason. I thought, why not do what I always did for my players, which was make them something that I could turn around and say, this is what you see.
Yeah, makes sense.
the first module featuring, we called them the prefab four, Tordek, Lida, Melly, and Jozan, the prefab four. They were on all of the first few covers that were game product. Guy on the right, Regdar, very unpopular inside TSR because they wanted the iconic fighter to be a dwarf, but management insisted it be human. And I kind of did that because you want to draw in the widest range of people possible. Anyway, old Regdar was much hated, and so he turns up on many illustrations following being murdered, pulled apart, already dead, disintegrated. Regdar got killed over and over and over again.
Oh, wow. But then, so if someone, pisses you off, you can kill him off in a painting, basically. I love the freedom that allow any artist, I think.
In fact, come to mention it, that is Regdar's helmet right there. There's his shield. But we also have Miley's crown and Tordek's shield and axe. And so I killed the prefab four as well in this painting. Worth noting that there is still a leg and a stirrup on that horse. There's still a rider on that horse.
Oh, God. I hadn't noticed. I hadn't noticed because I was struck by the light reflecting the golden light on the red wings. I love the feeling of being a warm light, like late afternoon. So it gives me the feeling of being late afternoon. I don't know if it's correct, or dawn maybe, but at least a warm light.
Yeah, that could be breakfast he's bringing in.
Yeah. How big of a jump was it for you technically to go from traditional techniques to computer?
Around 2001, I think, work started coming into the offices at Wizards of the Coast that had been done with Painter, Corel Painter. And unlike Photoshop digital art of the era, it looked like paint. And I knew there was going to be another sea change in illustration. When I was working advertising, I got a little left behind when Photoshop hit the scene and computers, because you basically needed $100,000 to set up a rig that would do the kind of things that you can do on pretty much any laptop now. But a lot of guys that I knew went out of business, and my own work started to decline. And I was glad that I had left airbrush behind, because every airbrush artist I knew just went out of work. So when I saw stuff that looked like real paint coming into the offices done in Painter, I figured I'd better learn this, because I didn't trust Wizards of the Coast. After Hasbro bought them, I was pretty sure they were going to start laying people off soon, and that they would start with the artists, because that's what they always do. And they did eventually do that, but I had picked up Painter and was learning how to use it. And while I regret not having paintings, I don't miss cleaning palettes, washing brushes, cleaning up messes. I don't miss drying time. If I could paint digitally in Painter and then have an oil painting at the end, that would be perfect, but it doesn't work that way. So really, some of these oil paintings that you see through here that I did for D&D are among the last oil paintings I did. And in fact, the painting on the left here is oils, and the painting on the right is digital.
Oh, that's intriguing.
The thing about Painter was that it let me paint the way I paint. Once I had found a tool that was analogous to a glaze, for example, or the brush that would let me paint wet into wet and blend and get painterly effects. And then later on, especially when I figured out how to use the texture in Painter, opened up all sorts of doors. But really, Photoshop at the time was just a rubber stamp or a clone tool or an airbrush. And there was no way I could have done paintings that looked like my work in Photoshop. But in Painter, I could. And I still mostly use Painter because I really like the workflow, the workspace. Now, the painting on the left here, I started it in oils based on the drawing that I had submitted. This was another Dragon magazine cover. And halfway through it, the art director came down and said, "Oh, we have to rearrange this. I don't like the figure there. This is half painted." So I scanned what I had in and finished it digitally and gave her what she wanted for the magazine, and then came up with a composition that just pleased me, that was neither the one on the magazine nor the one that I had started painting originally. So that painting on the left is a hybrid. Some of it's oils and some of it's digital. And then the two on the right are digital. And as were these. Now the one on the bottom started out as a pencil drawing. I really anticipated taking that to finish in oils, which always begins with a big pencil drawing value study on vellum, which I would then take to Kinko's and use their big document copier to copy my drawing onto hot press watercolor paper. Take that back, mount it, and paint on that, so that in the transfer process, I don't lose anything, and I could be as detailed in my drawing as I wanted, because it would all become part of the painting through this process.
How long does it take to work you mentioned the program, computer? No.
Yeah, Corel Painter.
Corel Painter, thank you. Does it allow, is there a difference in the time it takes to make the painting?
Yeah, it's much faster because there's no drying time, there's no cleaning up palettes, there's no washing brushes.
Yeah, so overall,
and it's very, you can be more adventurous because as long as you've been doing a regular save as, if you screw up too badly, you can just back up a version and keep going, you know, whereas if you screw up an oil painting really, really badly, you've got a really badly screwed up oil painting.
That's so true. I think that's...
Scraping paint on the board, then hitting undo.
Yeah.
So that was my first digital cover on the right there, The Lord of the Iron Fortress. And I was discovering some of the things you could do with texture tools. I don't know if you can see the kind of pitted metal texture on the robot, but
actually, yes. Right.
Yeah, that was one of the paper textures in Painter, just turned way up to give it like super presence, and it looks like that kind of pitted, hammered iron. Now these were two of the first freelance jobs I did after Hasbro laid us off. And it's the reason that I felt I needed to learn digital paint so that I could work faster. I knew I was going to work faster to keep my income moving. So these two paintings, which would have taken me 2 or 3 weeks in oils, were done in about a week each. And that's the...
After the, as you mentioned, they laid you off, not just you, but the whole office. Was there a moment, did you know what you wanted to try to do in the field, in the industry, or did you ever think about going back to advertising as opposed to trying to make it into concepts for cinema or for other medias as well?
I got one inquiry from a filmmaker one time, wanting to know if I could drop everything and come work on a film. I said, well, I've got deadlines, I've got projects. Maybe we can schedule something. And that was the last I ever heard of it. So I don't know. I'm not sure I'm cut out for film work anymore. Maybe 20 years ago I would have been. But these kids today who learned on computers and know Photoshop inside out and can bash out concept art in no time at all, uh, I'm not sure I could keep up with them, honestly. I have had opportunity to work with some doing concept push for Magic the Gathering, and I was the slowest guy there because I'm traditional. They're all, grab this, distort it, slap it down, paint over it a little bit. Here's another picture for somewhere, thrown it together, and they get this beautiful concept work in no time at all. So I was happy to continue illustrating. It's what I always wanted to do artistically, and I was doing it. I'm doing book covers, I'm painting D&D, and then I got into magic art, and it's all fun. So, and I had a hand at concept work, and so I knew what the rewards were for that, and I really prefer doing a finished painting.
Of course.
It's the storyteller in me, I want to tell the whole story.
That's what I wanted to ask you, because you're a storyteller in more ways than one. I know you wrote at least, and correct me if I'm mistaken, at least one novel, Summer Dragon?
Right, yeah. About the time that America was getting ready to go to war in Iran, or in Afghanistan rather, and Iraq, I just really felt the need to express my feelings about what was going on in the world, but in a way that was creative, not self-destructive. I knew I had to turn all that emotion to something creative, or it was likely to eat me alive. And at first I thought it was just going to be a big book full of dragon art with enough story to kind of string the pictures together. There were already a bunch of dragon guidebooks out, something Sam and I tried to talk wizards into doing, and they just didn't see the value in it. And then suddenly they're everywhere. So I knew I needed something to set my book of dragon art apart. So I started working on the story that would string things together, and discovered really quickly that I had more to say than pictures alone could tell. And I decided, all right, if I'm going to actually write this, then I'm going to learn the craft. I mean, I always wrote when I was growing up too. Those were the two things I entertained myself with, art and story, which made D&D a perfect fit. But I started reading all the books on the craft and doing workshops with authors, and little by little, Summer Dragon came together to very, very good reviews. I'm working on the sequel now, and
That's great to know.
hopefully, I wish it would get translated into Italian.
It is, and yeah, okay. Did I mention that I'm an editor as well?
Well, okay. Yeah. Well, it's out in German and Russian and Chinese, believe it or not, but not in. And there's so many great fantasy fans in Italy.
There are. We love the German. When it's good quality, it's really well known and beloved in Italy. But how different was it, the experience of making the art for something that you had written yourself for your own work?
It was interesting that usually when I'm doing a book cover for a client, for a publisher, I try to read the manuscript if possible, and usually by a third or halfway into the book, I know what the cover should be. But on my own book, I had no idea what I should do for the cover. A friend had to tell me, it's the statue in the ruins, idiot. Of course, it's like symbolic of everything this book is about. Duh, okay. And then on the interior art for the book, that was a challenge in that I didn't want to start that until the book was finished. I didn't want to do art until I knew how it was going to slot in, and I didn't want artwork appearing in the middle of a chapter and interrupting the narrative I only wanted it between chapters, where you're already kind of pausing to take a breath. But then I didn't want to show them something they'd already seen in their mind, and I didn't want it to be a spoiler for what was coming. So finding the right scene to depict that happens just within the first, few hundred words of a chapter was the challenge there.
You said that the first. Oh wow! Sorry, I got distracted. I'm looking at the.
Yeah, the Elvish script that I designed for the Forgotten Realms.
When was this? When did you do this?
That would have been 2001 or so, I suppose. One of the last things I did for Wizard was the design of the swords for Atlanta Cutlery to make Drizzt swords. They kind of went cheap on them, to be honest. They shortened the handle, the hilt. They should be two-handed, like a katana for balance, and they shortened them. But you can see the Elvish runes from the previous page adapted onto his sword.
Yeah.
Swords. Come back. And something else Atlanta Cutlery did is they changed the phrase on the other side of both swords and misspelled them. But if you don't,
not many people will notice, but I understand the frustration for you. Yes. No, but I love hearing artists talk about the reality behind the concept, behind the work of imagination, meaning that, as you described, that sword required to be two-handed, double-ended, what you said.
That's how I felt. Yeah. Because you just, the center of weight then moves more towards the hand instead of out in front of the hand. It feels more balanced. Plus, you can use it two-handed.
Yeah.
But since Drizzt uses two, now see here in this painting, they're not two-handed handles, but that was the first painting I did of him in his third edition garb. As time goes on, I think his swords become more and more like the two I designed.
This is a striking image. The desolation comes right through, straight at you. Yeah.
That was a fun series to work on, that particular 3-book arc of Drizzt.
When it comes to battle scenes like these and the ones before, have you been inspired by battle paintings, paintings of real life historical battles or war scenes?
No, I haven't. The Underdark. Young Drizzt. He's probably only like 105 here. So because of the success of that previous trilogy, those new covers, 1,000 Orcs, especially Bob Salvatore told me once that he picked up 20,000 new readers because of that cover. And so for the next decade, then I was putting new covers on all the old Drizzt books. And it was a really fun run. I also got a great friend out of the deal. Bob Salvatore is one of my favorite people.
I'm glad you get the chance to, to work with people you like.
Yeah.
Because I suppose the collaboration gets to another level when you actually, two artists get each other, like each other.
Yeah. Worth noting in this painting that Tordek has found the tomb of his ancestors and his father's armor and shield and weapon, which you can see on the statue of his father behind him. Same axe, same shield, same armor. Sort of the story inside the story.
The kind of detail that only you would know. And then there are the paintings where if you put something that the reader has seen or the player has seen in other pictures, they can tell. It's like you speak to them and they can tell that there is another element. Of course, we can read that as well. Todd, I meant to ask you earlier, is there, you said you've done covers, you do covers for books. Is there one book you haven't had the chance to do yet and you would love to do the cover for that?
That I would love to do a cover for? Huh. Yeah. That's a good question. You know, I'm really looking forward to doing the cover for my next novel.
Good.
I know what it is this time.
Good. So that's what I meant.
I mean, I have favorite authors and favorite books. I don't know that I necessarily want to cover them just because, well, like Larry Niven was one of my favorite writers, science fiction author, and he has a book called Ringworld. If you're familiar with it, the Ringworld is like a ribbon encircles the star, and it spins to provide centripetal force, basically, and artificial gravity. And I made my D&D world a ring world just because I thought it was so interesting and because I wanted some science fiction in my fantasy. Dresden and Trary. What a life Drizzt has led. My goodness.
It is to this day one of your most famous work of art, isn't it? This character.
Yeah, with Bob Salvatore and Drizzt it's right up there with my association with D&D and magic, you know.
Of course.
I still pinch myself sometimes that I got to play in all those sandboxes. You know, I got to work on D&D. I got to design dragons. I got to paint magic cards. I got to work on Bob Salvatore's books.
I think you get to populate other people's imaginations and childhood as well. Yeah. And I can't wrap my mind around that, you know, being in someone.
It's very gratifying. It really is to have people appreciate what you do.
As you inspire younger artists and players who just would love maybe to become professionals in the future, to become artists or storytellers as well, is there anyone who has inspired you that you'd like to share?
Oh, absolutely. Michael Whalen was my idol. Frank Frazetta, Walt Disney. There were some guys in the ad world that I liked, David Wilcox and some others, but mostly it was the guys painting the covers for the science fiction and fantasy books that I was reading growing up. Frank Frazetta was sort of my left brain art father, you know, all energy and passion and fire. And Michael Whalen was sort of my right brain art father, very thoughtful and imaginative and definitely a thinking man's artist, Michael Whalen.
I think I understand what you mean. I was his his translator in Lucca when he came to visit us last, and I was with him when he introduced his own exhibition, the exhibition's own works in Lucca. So yeah,
he's such a sweetheart. He's such a
sweetheart.
I just wanted to point out, I don't know if you can see it, but this cover was part of the Legends of Drizzt series, but he doesn't actually appear in this book at all. So I'm going to zoom in here briefly. Try, if you're going to let me. Well, up here on this beam, I was thinking about it. Come on, scroll up. You can do it. You can do it. Okay, see up here on the beam, someone has carved "Drizzt was here."
Had you seen the Shawshank Redemption by then? Because I remember the scene at the end of the movie with Morgan Freeman.
Oh, yeah, Shawshank Redemption, yeah. What a great movie.
Oh yes, fantastic.
So let's see, Jarlaxle and Edintrary got their own series.
Look at this.
These were fun.
Todd, as we are nearing the end of our time for tonight.
Okay. Yeah, and we're not
almost halfway through.
We're not even halfway through.
No, but you're almost halfway through. I think it says a lot about what I'm fascinated. I love the way you use color. I love your control. And I love the fact that we are not even halfway through, because you don't go through a career like yours in an hour. It's there's so much to discover in this book, and I'm so glad you decided to do a Kickstarter for it, because when I did my research for this interview for our event, I went to the Kickstarter page, and if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I am, you started out with a lower threshold, with a lower goal. And because of the response that you got from your fans and from the people appreciating your work, Foundwords has grown in what is now, isn't it?
352 pages. Yeah, it was. It's a calculated risk on Kickstarter. You don't want a goal that's a number so high that people will think, oh, there's no way he's going to get that. You want to make it low so that people feel like, oh, I can buy in on this and it will happen.
Yeah.
I really needed to exceed that goal to produce the book I wanted to produce. But it's a little bit of psychology that you have to play in order to get it done. Now, maybe I'm fooling myself. Maybe it would have worked out just fine. But
no, I don't think so. I think you're right. Because the end result, and it's not even finished yet, isn't it? You said that you still have...
No, I still have to mark up the color proofs. It hasn't actually hit the printing presses yet, which is... I thought we would be done by the end of summer. But
wow, the pandemic didn't help, I suppose.
Yeah, I think COVID had a hand in slowing everything down. It was a bigger project than I think my designer realized it would be, even though I kept telling him, simplify, 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 just a basic grid. You don't have to design every spread. You just have to design the look of the book. And eventually, you know, working back and forth. I always liked Daniel's sense of design. Understated. I like his use of typography. It kind of matches the things I like to do. And so ultimately, in the end, I think it's going to be a really beautiful book. It feels great. They sent me the mock-up they sent me on the actual paper. It's thick and weighty, and it's just a very nice thing to hold in your hand.
That's great. That's great. So before we close, is there any big picture in particular that you'd like to share as a preview of what's to come?
Yeah, let me just jump to see if I can guess which page this is on. Nope, too far. That's the last picture in the book. Here's some of the interiors from the Summer Dragon.
What's the technique is this?
I'm sorry?
What's the technique in this?
These are, well, I did these in Photoshop, but to look like pen and ink. I originally thought I would do them in pen and ink, but there was 20 of them, and I needed to work faster, so I did them in Photoshop. There's my heroine. But this is, that's the cover of the Summer Dragon, and just a few words about it. That's the world that I am most ready to have fully found. So after we sign off, I'm going to go back to work on the sequel, and hopefully Hopefully you can.
Looking forward to reading it.
I'm sorry?
Looking forward to reading it, to read it.
I look forward to reading it too.
How is it more complicated? What's more complicated for you? What's more tricky, writing or drawing?
Oh, writing is way harder and way lonelier than painting.
How lonelier? Why lonelier?
You can turn a painting around and go, what do you think? And get an answer. But you can't just turn a book around and say, what do you think? People have to actually take the time to read the words. And that's a big ask. It's a hard thing to draw out of people, honestly. You have to have somebody who's going to act as a sounding board. And I have a very good friend. Her name is Les Howell. She has taught writing. She ran the Clarion workshops here in Seattle for years and years and years that helped to bring new writers out. And so honestly, I would not have been able to complete it without her input. So I am forever grateful to Leslie for her help. But, the things that I do artistically now, I've done for decades. And so my instincts are cemented. I'm still craving instincts in writing. I had to unlearn bad habits and learn good habits, but it still doesn't come as easily or as naturally. And right now I'm in the middle of the middle book, which is the middle part of the arcing story. It's a trilogy, and middles are the hardest part. So it's going kind of slow. I guess if you're an editor, middle.
In a way, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the farthest away from the light, from the goal you're trying to reach, from the end of the story. So,
right. Yeah. You're in the middle of the story. You're in the deep shit, but there's all those threads that have been set up to take me to the finish line that I have to keep in the weave, and anytime you introduce new characters, now you've got new threads in the pattern. And that was always the fun part for me. I originally set it up as 6 shorter books, but when Daw Books told me they wanted it, they said, we need you to take the first 2 books and combine them into one, because we like bigger books. So each book actually kind of reads like 2 books that make a bigger book. It was a better novel for having combined the 2, but part 1 comes to a finish. It sets up what follows, and the whole 6 books is a complete story, a complete arc. So that was an interesting challenge, to pinpoint all the key moments from beginning to ultimate end for the series, but then each book has to have an arc, and each book within the book ends up with a little arc, and all these arcs feed each other. So it's a fascinating process, and I would recommend writing a shorter book for your first effort.
So I wanted to ask you if you have any advice for young artists. We can close with write a shorter story, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, follow your passion. That's my advice to any young artist or young writer. Is what drew you to art when you were young was going on in your head. It's how that art fit in with the life you were living. It's a very personal thing. So, and that's why advertising was driving me crazy. I didn't grow up thinking, I want to paint beer cans. I'm going to paint tobacco boxes. No, I wanted to paint robots and spaceships and dragons and monsters and, all this fun stuff. So your first audience, the audience you were pleasing in the beginning, was yourself. Don't forget your first audience.
Grazie ancora per essere stati con noi e grazie ancora a Todd Lockwood per essere stato a Lucca Changes, anche se purtroppo non di persona. Funwars è online, lo trovate e potrete scoprire tutte le immagini che non siamo riusciti a vedere insieme stasera. Godetevelo perché merita. A presto e grazie.